Dearest beloved divine friends and family, brothers and sisters in Guyana, the diaspora, and around the world. Welcome to RKs Guyana Free Media in the Raw. Today is the Sunday of 26th July 2020, and this is what we call the elections 2020, the absolute preponderance of stupidity and madness. Friends and families, as Guyana go down in history around the world for being the lawless, vulgar, most vulgarly led by a government who has committed a clandestine coup d'etat since 2015, putting things in place so that it cannot be overrun ever, by putting powers, techniques and systems in place so that it will stay in power for perpetuity, albeit deceit, clandestine thievery, and disgrace and disgust, bringing Guyana constantly, as it did in the 70s and the 80s, into perpetual shame. Your brother, your friend, me, Haji Roshan Khan, reading from the Kaichor News and other news, the Stabrook News, and unfortunately I don't have the Guyana Times, but reading articles from there that are most pertinent. Ladies and gentlemen, we all have witnessed the ridiculous presentation by Attorney at Law Jeremy of Trinidad and Tobago representing the coalition. And we have listened to the masterful articulation of Attorney at Law Mendez, our own Anil Nandalal, and others. And we saw how on several occasions, and in the past as with the OAS, where the Attorney General made a fool of himself and a fool of the coalition government and brought most disrespect to our country, friends, family, brothers and sisters. Ladies and gentlemen, it is known the reason why Dominic Gaskin ran. Dominic Gaskin ran because he knew of the corruption and the thievery that was taking place, and he knew what sanctions would be levied against persons and country by the foreign powers for failing to perform as per the democratic clubs around the world in the form of sanctions. But ladies and gentlemen, some of you whose guys, some of you in Guyana and a few around the world whose eyes are clouded, you get nothing, but you feel a zeal. One maybe for ethnicity, one maybe for blind love, deaf, dumb and blind. Some of them see not, they hear not. Friends and family, brothers and sisters, imagine a warlord, a particular man, another minister who likes to quarrel and fight plenty, and others with their hands in the pie, so deep into the cookie jar, so much into the monkey trap that the monkey don't want to release the fruits in order to take his hands out, and he gets caught by the hunters. The cookie jar with the child, full in the hand with candies, but is not taking out his hand out of the candy jar by dropping some. This is exactly what is happening here in Guyana. My divine brothers, friends, ladies and gentlemen, exactly what is happening. Their hands are in the cookie jar, then they are afraid to be caught. We have one particular warlord whose hands is into every concession, every land deals, every business projection and investment. Most of his money is spent on women and foreign investments, ladies and gentlemen, most of which is being looked at. And women and wine and fancy vehicles and fancy houses and fancy cars. Tremendous billions have been made. Investments into businesses, particularly with the two-lettered business magnate in Guyana, the two-lettered name, and others as well. Anything you want to do, he has to get a kickback. He has to get a upfront personal payoff. He has to get a share into the business that he and his family for generation can draw down. generation upon generation, ladies and gentlemen. Who is this man? You call his name, and I tell you that you are right. And this female minister, one of them have two expensive HIMAC, ladies and gentlemen, working in the Unity Mahaika area with an Indo-Guyanese APNU AFC contractor and loyalist, I think opportunistic loyalist. But two of the vehicles that are working there have just been washed down and hidden away, clandestinely owned by a minister in the government who talks plenty and who has lots of mouth. Also who has a penchant for violence. And not a male, ladies and gentlemen. This is what these people have been involved in. So this is why they're afraid of being caught. And they're afraid of inquiries. And they're afraid of losing the power. Ladies and gentlemen, Hamilton Green, supposedly an ambassador of peace. A man who fights for moral and other compunctions to save a nation, went on radio through Mark Benchcup's operation in New York, in his little basement home, I understand. Listen, we know what Mark Benchcup is up, and I am not going to say anything about him. He has to do what he has to do in order to keep his viewership, his flock. But I will not be surprised that he's entertaining people who are encouraging violence for Hamilton Green and others to go against the rule of law, to cast aside the Constitution, and to me that smacks of treason. And I will not be surprised if the American government comes down on him for hosting such talk shows in their soil, encouraging or allowing a former Prime Minister and a minister supposedly of religions and peace and harmony, supposedly, now his heart is coming out and he's exposing himself. He's encouraging a government, Mr. Hamilton Green, aka Bilal Green, encouraging a government to go against the rule of law, cast it aside. Against the rule of law, forget about the Constitution. Rule by decree and military brinkmanship. Ladies and gentlemen, friends and family, I think the Americans will be going now after Hamilton Green. And he also will be marked. He will not be able to travel to America or the free world. I have a strong feeling this is what it's coming down to. And the man is his age, his twilight years. Let us not remember it was Hamilton Green who, after the 1992 elections, was causing a riot and was trying to create a fervor and deception and a war in Guyana. And what happened, friends and family? The master of democracy, at least by then he woke up, my friend Hugh Desmond Hoyt, fired him from the People's National Congress. And fired him for good reasons. And here he is back again today, encouraging the president not to hand over power, not to follow any kind of democratic norms, and also, my friends and families, brothers and sisters, not to follow the Constitution, cast it aside, and not to follow the rule of law, because they have their military strong men throughout the country surrounded tactfully in all the REOs, in all the regions. They have military REOs and chairmen and people in major commissions and institutions and organizations, military people that he can control, that the president can control, president caretaker acting mode. And so they have the country actually in a state of coup d'etat. Friends and families, 2 years ago, I think 4 years ago, I wrote that when they started to repair the fence of the office of the president, and they were putting on the kind of a fence, and what I see they were doing militaristically by planting military personnel around the country, old, burn-out, washed-out men, some of them committing rape and otherwise, some of them involved in wanting kickbacks and percentage for contracts. around the country, ladies and gentlemen, I said it was a coup d'etat. It's in the newspapers, you can check the media, Roshan Khan words on Google, on coup d'etat, check the various newspapers. 2 times I wrote. And this is exactly what has happened. This is why we can afford not to hand over power. Friends and families, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, me, your brother, your friend Haji, Dr. Roshan Khan. Let us look at the front page of the Kaichor News. Army had spent almost $700 million for 4 planes, only 2 operating. $700 million, ladies and gentlemen, of your tax dollars. They don't say if it's US or Guyana, but your money, friends and families, my money. And you tell me if the warlord would not have gotten a huge kickback here. But all of this will come out, you know. And some of them will get some serious jail in the future. This is what they're afraid of. And then we have, don't aid and abet elections of fraud. GECOM chair pleads with the appeal court. The chairperson of GECOM is telling the appeal court, don't aid and abet elections of fraud. They're trying to use the courts to commit a fraud, friends and family, brothers and sisters. And mixed responses from government officials on visa revocation. And we go to the article, friends and family, into the newspapers. Decisions due on Thursday. The matter was listened, well articulated. Some nincompoops went to protest, calling names and upsetting businesses and protesting at the US Embassy, the appeal court, as if that will matter, because perchance they have 2 Indo-Guyanese, as if justice, all the justices will be like the 2 previous ones that judged twice against the norm of righteousness and justice. They believe the others will do the same as well. When we saw that Rishi Prasad said what he had to say and he kept out of nonsense, and because he's a judge, he could not give his personal opinion, but give his legal opinion. And now because Miss Bihari, the new judge, replacing Brasington, is now in the High Court, I beg your pardon, in the Court of Appeal. They are making mockery and trying to harass her and intimidate her. What nonsense and deceit and trickery is this of these people? They're trying to even intimidate the judges. When they had their 2, like you saw when they were talking, you could have seen the ridiculosity in their voices, and you saw the 2 of them giving pronouncements, and you know the lies. Nobody went to protest against them. Nobody in the country or the opposition, who should now be the government, ever went to protest. But they did what was legally right, and then they won the cases. Friends and families, Guyana is in a state of shame. Don't aid and abet elections of fraud. And this is an article saying that Claudette Singh pleads with the appeal court. Attorneys arguing against the appeal filed by a partnership of National Unity and Alliance for Change, counting agent Missinga Jones, to block the final elections declarations, have asked the court to ensure that electoral fraud is not perpetuated in Guyana. Jones, through her lawyers, Mayor Robertson, Roysdale Ford, and John Jeremy, want final declarations to be made based on the report containing the disputed figures of March 13th. Region 4 declaration, the crux of Jones' complaint is that Section 22 of the Election Law Amendment Act is unconstitutional, and Order 60 of 2020, by which the recount was conducted, is invalid and has no effect. And you know, imagine the President acting caretaker Granger, whom I thought I had a lot of respect for, is saying he is disputing the recount, even though it was gazetted, even though he is the one who requested with Barra Jagdeo for it to be done. But now, because the people will not allow a simple thing like a national award given to Miyamoto, Prime Minister, and then the CARICOM head, to thwart their conscience of justice, the President now, with his henchmen and warlord, do not want to accept the recount figures. When it was he who said, in my commentary I'm telling you, that CARICOM was the most legitimate interlocutor. This is contrary to the decision by Chief Justice Roxanne George Wiltshire, which she ruled last week that the final declaration must be made on the basis of the figures from the recount. The recount figures show victory for the opposition People's Progressive Party Civic over the APNU AFC. In her submissions before Justice of Appeal Don Gregory Rishi Prasad and High Court Judge Priya Sivanarayan Harry yesterday, King Kite Thomas, attorney for the chairperson, Claudette Singh, pleaded with the court not to aid and abet illegalities committed by agents of GECOM by legitimizing the report containing March 13 fictitious figures presented by Region 4 returning Officer Claremont Mingo. In other words, she's asking for Claudette Singh that they must not allow illegalities to perpetuate in the court and to change the will of God and the will of the people in Guyana, so to say, ladies and gentlemen. She was not the only lawyer ardently arguing the point. Trinidad-based senior counsel Douglas Mendez, representing the People's Progressive Party, was among the list of opposing legal teams making similar presentations. Electoral fraud. Leading the arguments on the issue of electoral fraud, Kite Thomas, former Solicitor General, contended that when the court properly examines the case, there is no other conclusion that can be made except from that the appellant Jones is asking the judiciary to aid and abet specific illegalities which led the March 13 Region 4 declaration. Ladies and gentlemen, we know that the appellant is asking the court to set aside the figures of the recount. And she is asking, that is, Kim Kite, Your Honours, I ask this honourable court not to be used as an instrument of fraud. They dressed up their application in a lot of legalese. Legalese kind of a word, but that is what they are asking the court to do, she asked. They try to make it look a bit legalistic. Ladies and gentlemen, relying on the legal presentation cited in her written submission, Kim Kite Thomas noted that the GECOM is asked with the duty of ensuring that the statutory officers carry out their functions in keeping with the law. She said that is what GECOM is doing by directing the Chief Elections Officer, who is the statutory officer within the Commissioner and is subject to the disciplinary control of GECOM. Ladies and gentlemen, he could be fired for failing to carry out his orders. Further, I go on. Further, the attorney noted that there is no election disputes as it outlined by the complaints of the appellant. Rather, she said contentions foisted on the court by way of appeal are best suited for an elections petition. So, ladies and gentlemen, I will go no further. We know what we are saying here. We have covered the part that we need to, and I move forward. I'm going to move on now to Paul Tennessee. Paul Tennessee, who was the former presidential candidate in the Democratic Labour Movement several years back, fighting against the dictatorship of Lyndon Forbes Sampson Burnham's government during the late 70s and 80s. And I'm going to read to you, taken from Sunday, July 26th, Kite News. Former Guyanese politician Paul Nehru Tennessee said that Guyana is already in a dictatorship, and that if President David Granger refuses to accept the declaration of the results of the national vote recount, he will have consolidated that dictatorship. The man is saying we have a dictatorship. Didn't I tell you all we had a coup d'etat? We are now approaching the 6th month of the election results, longest in the history of Guyana, ladies and gentlemen. And those who got nothing, who are supporters of the party, but because of love and ethnicity, they are supporting the ridiculosities, the nonsensicalities, the thievery of a nation, and encouraging coup d'etat and dictatorship, ladies and gentlemen. You, some of the supporters of the party, who have got nothing, who have left stranded, and all their rich friends and families have drawn down, and their business magnates and partners have drawn down. And you, the ordinary man of the People's National Congress, the ordinary man in the APNU AFC, you've got nothing but degradation and disgrace. The big boys got guns galore. They set up some private army with some gold miners and others. and some business people in central Georgetown. Ladies and gentlemen, guns galore for their friends and families, and money upon money, and money upon money, flowing like air in the wind. Friends and families, brothers and sisters, back to Tennessee. And I will skip a few paragraphs because I don't want to make it too long. Tennessee addressed the public on Kite Shore Radio, room 592 on Saturday evening. He had declared the Democratic Labour Movement a political party which existed in the 1980s and contested the 1985 elections. In the fight for free and fair elections, he is now director of Roraima Institute, a non-partisan research and policy institute, and a professor of the University of the District of Columbia in Washington, D.C., USA. There he teaches in government and political corruption, among other things. And he knows well about political corruption then in Guyana and is well au fait with political corruption here in Guyana. Explaining how he arrived at the view, Tennessee said, constitutionally, since March of last year, we were supposed to have an election based on the no-confidence motion, and so from April last year to the elections of March this year, if you don't have a sit-in parliament, what do you have in a country? From the time of the NCM, you don't have a sit-in parliament. And then you had elections, and then you still don't have a parliament. What do you have? He's trying to say you have a dictatorship, you have a dictator. Tennessee pointed to the importance of parliament as a representative of the people's sovereignty. The people are sovereign, but the people delegate that sovereignty to parliament that they elect. There is no parliament, so we have had a dictatorship from then to now. I'm going to skip a few paragraphs. My personal view, I'm going on to later on, my personal view, Tennessee told Kite Shore Radio, is that I do not believe that the PNC leadership does not know that they have lost the elections. Oh, we know, they know. And this is why all of this game, because they're afraid of being caught with their hands in the cookie jar and the head at the guillotine. I think they know they lost the elections, but they're not being honest. He noted that all of the political parties, as well as the international observers, have said that the APNO and AFC have lost the elections. And even India, ladies and gentlemen, added previously, and then is saying now, that all parties must respect elections outcome, including Africa, including African, Caribbean, and Pacific states, ladies and gentlemen, and all the countries in the world. Ladies and gentlemen, me, your friend, your brother, for a better, a glorious, a hopefully democratic Guyana. Me, Haji Dr. Roshan Khan, saying thank you for tuning in, and farewell, friends.